Thank you so much for that awesome intro. And thanks so much to everybody who came out to hear this talk today. I have to say, I really, every time I think this is like the third time I'm in Simulacra or Simulacra, however way you guys pronounce it. But I always enjoy coming to this metaverse, and I love the stroll up here to the sculpture. So it's always a pleasure to come here. It cheers me up, and it's a nice little bright spot in the middle of my workday to visit here. But thanks everyone for coming. As Brian said, yes, I work primarily with 3D CG, in mostly for render 3D, but I also have a pioneering history both with AR and VR. I did one of the first commissioned AR pieces for the Smithsonian Museum, which was a chronometric sculpture also. And I've exhibited in AR in other museums, and I've also done VR. But this particular piece that you see here, and as Brian pointed out, I have like kind of an unusual and unique style of 3D CG figuration and animation that I call chronometric sculpture. And the reason that I call it that is because for me, I don't necessarily look at bodies or natural human kinemation as an absolute. And I look at it as a starting point for virtual and digital experimentation as an artistic form. And I very much am inspired by the avant-garde traditions of 20th century art. So I'm looking to find new aesthetics that have never been seen before. And so my art practice is obviously very informed by CG, but also very much informed by painting and sculpture and installation. And so whenever I'm kind of looking at a figure and animating it, I'm sort of really mining the full territory of art history, cinema, CG, animation history, and kind of like using a creative stream of consciousness flow. And I also use glitch heavily in my practice. I mean, this is a glitched piece also, and for me, glitch is really important because I always say that glitch is to the technological what mutation is to genetics. And so glitches actually kind of help advance not just digital art but also virtual and metaverse possibilities. And another thing that I deal with is posthumanism. I mean, what are we now that we're posthuman? And so for my approach to the body and the form and the motion of that body, I work with ideas of posthumanism. I mean, like in this glitched intersecting Venus, the legs are pointing up, and that, by the way, is those of you who animate is a common, not common, but maybe occasional mocap glitch that happens. And so, of course, this piece isn't the glitch because I then take the glitch and sort of flesh it out into something that's intentional and refined. But and the texture on it is also super low poly glitch texture. But the idea is to sort of look at this glitch or this accident in the studio, which sparked entire art movements, which is an older art historic idea too. But to kind of transpose that to the digital, all of us work with digital tools. Glitches happen. And to me, glitches are those little gateways and windows into completely new possibilities that are unlike anything else we've ever seen. And the challenge, of course, for me, and as I suspect it is for other glitch artists who I admire, is to take that glitch and be intentional with it and to push it and create something new with it. So when I first had to actually do Intersecting Glitched Venus, this is actually an NFT on Super Rare. And Super Rare did an AR art exhibition at Art Basel Miami 2021, which actually the New York Times wrote about too. So this piece was for that. And because of the limitations of the AR app, and there were like 20, 30 artists in that app, by the way, keep that in mind. But I had to deliver like a tiny, I think it was supposed to be like a 3 meg file, but it was ridiculously small in terms of being able to deliver 3D and animation and textures and everything. So I had done this piece as what I call my uber low poly, low texture size short animation loop to work for that exhibition. And so when Brian hit me up for, putting in a chronometric sculpture or animated sculpture for Simulacra, or Simulacra. I decided to put this in because I told Brian, I said, this is my guaranteed to play in any AR VR context piece because she's like super low poly, short, sweet animation, low texture size, pixel wise, and she's good to go. And a standard shader also. And so, I put this in, but I have to say, I love the way it looks in this world. And I love where it's placed. And I love the dialogue that she actually has with the environment around her. And also some of the other sculpture pieces throughout the park. So I actually find this to be really exciting and really interesting. And I think another idea of glitch is to sort of glitch the conventional depictions of the female form. I mean, if you've seen my glitch goddesses, I work with a body that goes from heavy to young to slender to old to pregnant to, all to abstracted, stylized, glitched, etc. So I kind of like this idea of bodies that are constantly changing shape in the metaverse because for me, it sort of conveys the ideas of digital plasticity and the immateriality of the virtual and the digital. And it also allows me to really define new artistic avant-garde aesthetics for this world. I was actually a student at NYIT back in 1979 when Professor Albie Ray Smith had created the world's first images paint program on VAX supercomputers, which back then were used for missile guidance control systems, by the way. So yeah, that's how far back. No, but seriously, no. Actually, when we used to take the classes, I have to tell the story. Those Vaxes were first of all the size of a refrigerator, and there were like giant signs on it that you would like go to jail for life if you removed the cover because it was all like secrets during the Cold War and stuff. Anyways, but it was hysterical to be to sort of work on to create art on something that was controlling missile guidance control systems during the Cold War, but. So I actually worked with early computer art technology, but I also did traditional cell animation and stop motion. And I was in a media program, not necessarily studio fine arts like painting and sculpture. But I think that gave me an excellent foundation that I've been able to sort of build on since. I mean, I'm pretty much what you might call a hands-on maker artist, and people are always shocked when they find out that they come to my studio and it's just me and a bunch of workstations and all the media I have from all the years of work. And I always tell people that digital art saved my life. The reason I make so much work is because I love it, and because it actually for me continues to be a journey with no end. And I think that as each iteration of the technology creates new possibilities, I feel re-energized and excited to mine those possibilities. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. I think one aspect is also to glitch the male gaze. I always say that most of art history has been about the depiction of females through the male gaze, or that's the lens. So the really interesting question becomes, what is the female form if it's freed from the male gaze and women are creating it? And now you look at 20th century, we have like, you have like Louise Bourgeois, you have Nikita Sanfal, who did a lot of female figures. You have Cindy Sherman. So we have the beginnings of artists that are female, exploring the female form and the possibilities for it, freed from the male gaze. But I feel as if it's like compared to the thousands of years of art history, it's not that much time. So, I'm part of me is also trying to look for what else can the female form be. Like, I mean, if you look at this intersecting glitched Venus, there's something quintessentially feminine about her, but she's completely glitched. And that's the idea that I find fascinating. I mean, what is femininity? How far can you push it in terms of abstraction? And how far can you go while still retaining the essential ideas? And what new ideas emerge when you push it that far through abstraction?
Thank you so much for this talk, Marjan. So my question, I want to expand a little bit on the idea that you just talked to, this idea of, I'm looking at my own notes, this idea of plasticity and how much. I'm going to ask the question badly because I'm not sure how to say it. So please, both you and Brian, maybe form this better. But this idea of um, letting the female form emerge using these tools, as opposed to, or then maybe the next step is, and what part does do you, the artist, then want to say, okay, now I want to manipulate it in this direction, and let me try these more deliberate actions. And so using art history as an example, not so much about the female form, but about the movements that we had realism. I'm going to use Picasso as an example. So Picasso's doing realism, and then he starts to simplify and break down his visuals into what ends up being cubism. So what are the kinds of things that in this medium, an artist, and you in particular, if you choose to address it, might want to take next, right? Like, what might you want to abstract more, or what might you want to control more deliberately instead of letting it be a bit more random on the glitch side? So, if that leads you to something you want to share, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, that's actually a great question, and thank you for asking it, Artemis, and for all your other comments as well. Well, yeah, actually, my other animations, like the Glitch Goddess, are a lot more elaborate. Like I said, this had to be a short loop. So usually when I do the other animations, the other chronometric sculptures, there's a much, you might say, longer narrative and dialogue in form, in sculptural form, and I use many different types of body deformations, and I not just morphs and the mocap, but I also a lot of post to pose, additional post to pose animations, simulations, dynamics, and procedural um, animation. I'm kind of what you might say note happy when it comes to procedural deformations and nodal animation. But I think in those pieces, yeah, I've had a lot more elaborate conversations in form. But I think Picasso is a really good example, because if you look at, you know, Matisse and Picasso and Breton to some extent in terms of that particular era in modernism, they weren't, I think they were the artists who flattened the picture plane, but then they were the artists who went beyond just flattening the picture plane, and they really pushed the boundaries of what is a visual and in art. And they were very much informed by the breakthrough technology of their time. The birth of cinema, the birth of cinema, the photography, etc. All of those things that kind of made realism irrelevant. And so the artists were freed from realism, and freed from realism, they could go crazy, and they did. And the result is, the incredibly fantastic work we have from that era. But here's the question, like, where are we at in the 21st century? Well, I'll tell you, we're freed from realism because of the technology that we have access to and the tools that we're using and what that allows us to do. So our freedom isn't because, there we have realistic CG. Well, we have realistic CG. We have achieved a high degree of realism in 3D CG, and believe me, I'm a huge fan of 3D CG. That's realistic. And I've professionally for many years I did realistic 3D CG as well, because I worked in a lot of different studios. So I kind of feel like I have something in common with Picasso in that way, that I've done realism, and I'm doing I'm also doing the abstracted work that I'm doing. But I think that our freedom is really born of the possibilities of the technology and the tools and what we can do with it. And if you look at the internet, there's so much CG, there's so much digital art, and so much of the work, in my opinion, is self-similar and iterative. So there's an aspect of the technology that is about self-similarity and iteration. Think of it as like computer-generated fractals. There is something fractalesque about working with CG tools. So that makes the whole idea of innovating or creating the visuals nobody's ever seen before even more exciting.
This is just kind of a tech. I'm just curious as I look at this, and it's very mesmerizing. The speed, everything about this feels like it's 100% meant for exactly where it is here. And especially, like I said, the speed of the animation. And I just wondered, did maybe I don't know if you want to answer this, but did you change the speed at all? It just seems so perfect. Like I said, did you change it for this, or is this the original as it was?
This is the original NFT,
Okay.
but I can tell you, I can look up the number of scene files that tell you exactly how many times I changed the damn speed. But yeah, like usually when I start, I work with I work in stages. So stage one is the base smoke app, and then I'll do X number of tests for speed and loop and just how clean is the loop. And so that might take a lot of time because to me, slow isn't, there's like, I always say, slow is 10 different versions. Fast is 10 different, everything is 10 different versions. So, yeah, actually, I'm happy you noticed that. I spent a lot of time finding the right speed because I didn't want it to be so slow that it became meh, as I call it. But I wanted it to be slow enough to evoke that sense of the sublime in motion. And to me, that's always a tough speed to find. So it takes for each animation, I usually spend an inordinately large amount of time, just testing out the base mocap just in terms of pure speed. So thank you for noticing that.
Hey, thank you so much for your talk and doing this art. I've been working hard on following the work that you're doing now, and I saw that you're doing a series of NFT elephants for a nonprofit. And since I work for a nonprofit, I'm really curious about how NFTs could be used for societal good. And so I was wondering if you might talk about that project and how I can get one of those elephants.
Oh, thanks for that question. This has actually been all I've been doing. Well, not all, but a good bit of the last 6 months has been these two actually philanthropic projects. So this is the second one. The first generative NFT project I did was actually one that's very near and dear to my heart, the Berlin Wall Memorial NFT. So they had created as a philanthropic project. The Berlin Wall was up for 10,600 days. And so they decide, and thus the 10K generative NFT project in this case. But their idea was to take five different artists and to give each artist, like, I don't know, like 2,300 or something uh, NFTs to do for to a sort of memorialize the Berlin Wall, and 50% of the funds were originally designed to go to democracy funds all over the world. But then the Ukraine war happened, and so they decided to devote the majority of the funds to evacuating Ukrainian refugees. So I did actually generative 3D animation with music. So one of the traits is 3D CG animation in my glitchy style, music. So it's actually a first using traits in the form of 3D CG animation, music, blah blah. So I decided to focus on average everyday men and women, grandmothers, grandfathers, young people, old people who escaped the Berlin Wall. And so I decided to kind of take these figures and then put them through my glitchy style, as in this idea the way average everyday people found the heroes and sheroes within to transcend authoritarianism and escape. And so I love that project. And we've sold so far, I think, $165,000. And it's paid for the evacuation of 20,000 Ukrainian refugees from Ukraine to Germany. And the way the charity works is they fill these buses with food and medical supplies and clothing from Germany. The buses drive into the Ukraine and they empty the supplies and they fill the buses with refugees and bring them into Germany. And that's what this project has been funding. So I'm very, very proud of the Berlin Wall. That's on OpenSea and you can check it out, which then brings us to the second example of generative NFT for social impact, which is the Good Society. Now, the Good Society is devoted to NFTs for social impact and for good. So they paired with Space for Giants, which is the charity from the British royal family that funds, elephants, saves elephants and creates space for elephants. And I love elephants. And also the Aspinall Foundation, another foundation. And there's like about 3 or 4 more foundations. I don't have the sheet in front of me that has all the names of the foundations, so I apologize. I should know them off by heart, but I just know the Space for Giants and Aspinall. But yeah, so they contacted me, and I love the idea of being able to do a second, generative NFT project with social impact, and it's on, carbon clean Tezos, etc. So the idea was for me to do the giants of the metaverse, as they're called, and the idea was like, let's use the giants of the metaverse to save the giants of the earth. Or that was like kind of my line about it. And I love the fact that these giants, the sale of each one of these giants of the metaverse is helping fund the survival of African and Asian elephants, because most people don't realize like I did a combination of male, female, African, and Asian. And the rare ones are, of course, the families, the mama, the dad, there's a mom and a dad and a female and a boy and a girl elephant. So there's an African family and there's also an Asian family for the elephants, and those are right now but whitelisted for. It hasn't gone into public sale yet, so it's by invitation only. But if you're really interested, DM me on any of my social media, and I'll get you an invite for minting.
Thank you so much. I saw those elephants and they're just gorgeous. And once I saw the connection to the type of work you're doing, that's really fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I really think there's a lot of potential for NFT art to be art, but also to have social impact. And I think we're just scratching the surface in terms of all of these possibilities.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I didn't even know that existed until I saw your work. So it's really exciting for me.
Awesome. And another thing about the elephants, I just have to say that I really wanted these elephants not just to be some JPEG on OpenSea, and I said I'm not doing that. I really wanted each one to be, something you could easily hang on a wall, like print and put it up on a wall. Like I wanted them to perform as art, and every time, because I never see. I haven't seen all 5,000 possibilities, and when I'm doing the layers and the traits, it's not possible to see all 5,000 possibilities. So every time a collector mints it and shares it on Twitter, I'm like, oh wow, that's awesome. It's like I'm seeing it for the first time, and I'm really happy to say so far each one of them really, I'm like, wow, these actually can perform as prints on a wall. So I'm really happy about that part too.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Thank you. Maybe I should do a print run of them too. What do you think? That might be an interesting novel idea, to use the same NFT generator technology that creates 5,000 iterations to deliver, a print edition using that technology. Like up till now, print editions are replicas of a single work, but here's a novel idea of exploring print editions using, the trade and variation and NFT generation in terms of random combination concept, also for a print edition.
Yeah, I love the uniqueness of generating it, which is really exciting. But yeah, no, if I get one, it's going on my wall for sure.
You'll be happy to know I did them at a high resolution. They're about 2,500 pixels. It's not as high as I would have liked to, but they're decent size for printing. Yeah. But that's what's exciting about all of this technology. If you take a moment and consider it, and I was talking about, the way the technology and the iterations and possibilities of the technology conveys this sort of sense of exhilaration with each iteration. That's what I mean. Here we are dealing with like, oh, here's a painting in a limited edition run of 20, but here's like this, well, here's 5,000 possibilities and nobody has any idea what they're going to look like. And by random, you get one and you print it, and this amazing, exciting kind of, organic phenomenon happens that results in the art,
Yeah, I had one question, and I apologize if you didn't want to talk about this, but you had mentioned um, that early in your career you did some animation, and I'm wondering if there's a way to see any of your early work.
Yeah, actually, I did I actually had to digitize. I had to find and digitize because I have a lot of that stuff in storage. But I actually did a show with the Museum of Contemporary Digital Art. Yeah, MOCDA in Decentraland last year, and so there were like 3 rooms in Decentraland. And you know what? One of the rooms had an early animation I'd done on the Amiga from like 1987 to like 1988. So that animation was actually playing in Decentraland. And yeah, I actually have that. I actually exhibited that. And I actually have a lot more. I have to say, I'm not always, I need to kind of, well, first of all, let me explain. I do have, and I do have my Amigas. I have 2 Amigas actually, but I have to have them well, let me explain. I can't play my animations on the Amigas to digitize them right now, and I'll tell you why. Because the Amigas are kind of old, and if I turn them on, it'll wipe out the motherboard. The battery acid can kill the motherboard. So, anyways, there's a good friend of mine in New Jersey who does recondition and rebuild Amigas. So I've just haven't had a chance to take my Amigas to him for him to redo the motherboard. I'm probably going to lose a lot of RAM and other things, but I have to basically rebuild a lot of my Amigas because not all the animations. I mean, some of them I have on video. Some of them the video has gotten damaged, so I can't digitize. So I need to basically basically play back the animations and output the video from the Amiga again to be able to digitize them. So yeah, it's a little trickier to do all of those animations, but I am trying to do it. I just finding the time is the issue for me. But yeah, thanks for asking about the early animations. Thank you so much for everyone who came. I really appreciate this. And yeah, I might hang around and just grab a few more shots of I got my OBS running. A few more shots of the sculpture, yeah.